Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Tech It Up with Cafe Cultura. It's your girl Jayla, and today we have Josh Blackwell from Blck Unicrn. Hi Josh, thank you for being with us today.
Hi, Jayla, thanks for having me.
So let's get it started and talk about a little bit about yourself, how you got started about Blck Unicrn.
It's been a journey. I think it's definitely been the culmination of all my life experience. I started my entrepreneurial journey, I guess, in high school, where I used to sell CDs, and I started a newspaper, and was always super interested in entertainment. Starting off right when I went to college at the University of Virginia. I created a performance troupe. I did lots of entertainment internships at places like Disney and venue management companies, and that was really my whole journey and lifelong passion. And was really fortunate to work in tech coming out of school and getting the opportunity to work for Oracle, for 4 years, and after that, got an opportunity to, I guess, take a trip into unicorn land and work with super fast pre-IPO and now IPO companies at an IoT fintech, and also workforce automation. And I went to those companies because I kind of had that itch again, to get back to my entrepreneurial roots. And I had the idea, and I wrote my essay about it for business school, Blck Unicrn, and it was much different from what it is now. I think we've iterated a lot and have really focused on our problem and solution, but ultimately, it combines all those different passions together. And I think that our journey really started with data. We identified this huge trend, while I was in business school, with immersive entertainment. So the company, I knew that I wanted to combine those two passions together, right? Tech and entertainment some way. And I realized that there's a stat out there that it's going to be a $400 billion industry by 2030, right? And that's XR, VR, and location-based experiences, and all this different stuff. So during my time in business school, we really got our hands dirty, and we created a immersive experience, an immersive entertainment experience. We had this 3-room experience in Silver Lake. It was a music-based experience, and there was a virtual reality room, an augmented reality room, and also like a safe room. And we had like a partnership with Fever. We were like being distributed through that platform, and we ended up digitizing it as well, and doing over like 3,000 experiences and like variations, different variations within that space and virtually. And ultimately that was a huge step forward, but to pull that whole thing off, it was really kind of a miracle. And although we identified the trend, we realized that the bigger problem is like the space has such high barriers to entry still, right? When we were trying to make that experience, like we would talk to people, and we were students, right? But they would still quote us like millions of dollars and say, oh, you have to space and do all this technical stuff and all that. I mean, we were super scrappy, but ultimately that led to the solution, that we have now, with Blck Unicrn, to ultimately lower the barriers to entry. And it's a marketplace for immersive experience creators, right? Where it's ultimately, the space is a bit of a black box. There's so many creators and talents out there, but it's hard for them to connect with the right opportunities to create a different experience. So ultimately, we connect brands, education institutions, enterprises wanting to do immersive training, or even retail CPG brands wanting to do live brand activations, with the people that do it, and they're all vetted. There's transparent pricing. It's everybody gets a rating. We have over 90% partner success rating, and also we have project management tools, within the platform too, and support, right, just to make sure that everything's on track. So yeah, we've seen lots of traction, and really excited. We're going to be pitching at AWE, this year, which is kind of like the world's biggest immersive entertainment conference.
Before we get into that, because I know we're gonna jump into it, I want to take it back for 1 second when you mentioned Disney, you mentioned Blck Unicrn kind of starting in a different place. How did that development or that road change the course of Blck Unicrn?
Yeah, yeah. Well, at first when I applied to business school, the thought for Blck Unicrn was really like kind of leveraging some Web3 technologies, right? So a big thing in Web3 is like token gated events, right? So a use case that we tried was, helping other creators create these immersive experiences, right, as a part of, launch, right? And that was a really big thing at the time. You had things like Bored Ape Yacht Club and, all this stuff, right? So, that was kind of something that we were experimenting with. So it started as that. And we saw really that we were having more success with live immersive experiences, right? So before we set up, like, we were doing lots of one-off live immersive experience events, pretty much prototypes of what would eventually become what we created in Silver Lake with the 3 rooms. And we debuted them at UCLA Anderson, right, while I was in business school, got like lots of feedback. We debuted it at Berkeley Skydeck as well, and still refined it, and ultimately like kind of it all clicked together when we debuted it at Tech Week, Andreessen Horowitz's LA Tech Week, and ultimately set up a space in UCLA Anderson to get things going. And so we did that for a while, right, to get to that number of experiences that we did. But ultimately we realized that what we created is pretty much just a small drop or stream in a vast ocean. It's there's so many artists. I mean, just from a strictly entertainment perspective, what artists wouldn't want to transcend their medium, right, and really have people step into their world? I think that every artist would love that, right? But it's just, where do you even begin to create something like that, right? There's no, the processes, it's not really operationalized, all that. So we realized that that's really the big problem that people want to solve, because we did it with a few creators, a few specific instances, but there's so many more people out there. But even more than that, there's so many organizations, right, virtual teams that are thinking, how do I really get people to understand what our company mission or what problem we're solving is all about, right, beyond just a PowerPoint slide or talking head, right? So we dabbled, and we saw, I guess, a stream, but ultimately we realized that, hey, this is really a vast, like, complex ecosystem, and there's not really it's a bit of a black box, right? There's no way to kind of track and operationalize and do these things at scale ultimately, right? Because when we created that experience, we realized, like, hey, this is going really great, right? But the process of getting like two, 3 other locations, right? You realize, we're a bit limited, right? Scaling and raising the funding and doing all these different things. So we're leading with this marketplace, but we have other features as well, such as for some of our premium subscribers, where they can sign up for spaces for fundraising, for additional AI tools, project management tools, and their kind of marketing platforms and things like that.
This happy marriage that you keep bringing up with media and tech. I know that media is one of those, being in media and entertainment for over 15 years. There's a lot of like gatekeeping. There's a lot of like, I want it first. I want the exclusive, and with tech, I feel like tech is a completely opposite world, in the sense of like, tech people want to help, they want to grow, they want to work together. How do you see that media and tech side like merging more than just concept? Because I know that a lot of people, have tons of ideas, but when it comes down to it, there's no execution. So how does something like Blck Unicrn help with that execution?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that there's definitely some truth in what you're saying, right? I mean, media is notorious for just wanting to control the IP, right? I mean, lots of lawyers, patents, different things like that, or I should say really just IP law, really. In tech, I mean, I think that it's a bit opposite, right? I mean, by the time you probably create a patent or IP for your tech, probably the next innovation has already happened, right? And people see that as a bit more of a people in tech don't really think they're going to win, with patents, right? It's kind of more like a landmine, right, to maybe block some people, but you can't really. It's not really a real moat, I would say, within tech, where maybe in entertainment media, it is, right? If you have the IP, right, you can kind of monetize in lots of different ways. But I think that lack of execution comes from ultimately the high barriers to entry and the lack of resources, right? I mean, because with a new space like this and emerging technology, you're having to deal with a high barrier to entry on lots of different fronts, right? So I think the first front is education, right? There's a lot of people out there. You mentioned this space and they're like, well, what is that, right? I'm not entirely, sure what that even is, right? So that's a huge barrier to overcome as well. And we do have like a courses platform, and we teach people kind of what this stuff is, and once they're on the platform, how to work with clients, how to create these experiences, how to gain specific skill sets for these specific experiences. But then I think the next barrier to entry for that is finding the right collaborators, right? To even make the project that we had, we had to collaborate with different folks in AR and VR, right? People that knew set design, right? There was so many different people that provided feedback and helped us out on our journey, right? So it's like, if you're new to the space, that's another barrier to entry, right? How do you meet the right people, right? So with this marketplace, we're solving that problem where it's vetted folks, it's people with a rating, it's people with transparent pricing, right? There's different options for all different types of creators, or organizations, enterprises for that matter, right? That can fit within any given range. And then you have other barriers to entry as well, right? It's like, once you have the people and you have the idea and maybe you're ready to go, then it's like you may not have the space, right? You may not have the funding or the sponsorship. So really, when we were talking to so many different people in this ecosystem, we realized that one problem really begets another, right? Because usually there's people with the space and the ideas, right? But they don't necessarily have the team, right? Or the people. There's people with the people and the funding, but they don't have the space or know the technology, or people with, the list goes on and on, right? It can be kind of all of those different things. So ultimately, we're really leading with this marketplace because I think that's just makes the most sense from a product perspective. But our ambition for our heavy users is to develop, create an operating system for them, right? Because one thing that I learned in tech is that you want to really solve the whole problem, right? Because if you're not solving the whole problem, and the whole problem is all of those things, right? That if you have to solve all those things to really, lower the barriers to entry. Because if you're not solving that problem, you're kind of just making, a widget, ultimately, right? So, we think that this marketplace is, there's lots of value, instant value that can be created. And for the folks that are heavy users, right, they're really using the platform a lot. And as we get more partners, we're seeing the demand for some of these other tools as well, so that they can turn these ideas into, not just experiences, but, scalable, profitable, products ultimately.
Yeah, where is I know now we can fast forward to where we were at the beginning of our conversation, is where is Blck Unicrn at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So we recently, crossed over 2 million in GMV, right? So this is primarily with our internal projects. We've had, lots of success in entertainment, space initially, but now we're really looking to scale into, the ocean, I call it, right? And just so many different industries that are looking, via a marketplace like ours, right, to bring their vision to life. And it's so exciting being able to pitch and be represented at AWE, because there's just so many different use cases, right? There's people that all around the world, they're looking to create something, right? Whether it's for their team or even personal occasions, right? They might want to do an immersive experience to honor a relative, right? Or maybe a special life event or occasion. And ultimately, I see this as a platform that can accommodate all of those different things, right? Via this marketplace. So we're really, so long as we continue to make quality experiences that people really like and they want to come back, and we can keep our partners happy, and also the hirers happy, the people looking to make these experiences, I think that that's ultimately the virtuous cycle. And we'll continue to see more quality experiences all around the world.
That's amazing. What is a piece of advice that you give a up and coming founder, somebody who's going through imposter syndrome, or that has these wild ideas, and like you said, sometimes you can't execute? So what piece of advice do you have for them?
I think that you should bet on yourself. I think that there's this analogy in, I guess, the tech world, that a lot of companies, they're building the ship or the plane, as they're flying it or driving it. So the only difference maybe between yourself and them is just the mindset, right? I think that the founders that are successful and have raised hundreds of millions of dollars, ultimately, they believe that they can make it happen, right? So I think that that's number one. But number two, I say it's great to just study, right? There's so many we're so lucky to have access to things like YouTube, right? You might be a founder, and there's only so many different types of business models, right? Like for us, we're making a marketplace, right? So for me, I love to look at early marketplace founders, right? Like Bezos, or Chesky at Airbnb, and so many others, right? And you realize that, hey, like in the beginning, they were doing a lot of this stuff, themselves as well, right? But ultimately, it's just about what reality you want to live in. I think that that's the biggest thing, right? Because it's so much about mindset, right? And I think that you also have to really be passionate about what you do, right? Because if you really love what you're doing, and you're passionate about it, I don't know if I don't think you have those imposter thoughts really creep in, because you just love it so much, right? It's like, what else could I possibly do, right? Like, when I wake up and do Blck Unicrn every day, and working with the team and everything, it's my dream job, honestly, right? It's like, I mean, I don't have really the thoughts of imposter syndrome, but it's like, what else am I going to do, right? This is kind of my main thing, right? So or my passion, right? So I think it's really those three things, mindset, studying other people that maybe want to create other things that you wanted to do, right? See their origin story and all that, and picking something that you're really passionate about, because everybody starts somewhere, right? Even Michael Jordan, there was a time, Kobe Bryant, all these people, if you like sports, they had to pick up the basketball for the first time. If you even watch Kobe Bryant interviews, he's going to say, I was terrible, when I was a teenager or whatever, right? So, it's the same thing, but I think practice and just keep kind of doing it consistently, it gives you confidence, naturally. But yeah.
Where do you see Blck Unicrn going within the next 5 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I did work at these hyper growth unicorn companies, and I learned, so much working for them. And ultimately, they were successful because they created a solution for underserved populations, right? Whether it was trucking and IoT, or folks on HR and IT teams, or folks on accounts payables teams, all these different things. And that's what allowed them to scale, right? Because there was this overlooked and underserved segment, right, that was dealing with all these legacy solutions. And ultimately, I think that with what we're creating now, we can have the same scale, right? I think that a lot of creators in this space, a lot of folks that hire folks to do these projects, they're underserved, right? They're on both sides of the marketplace, right? There's creators that are super talented that they may not have the connections or the visibility, right, to bring their stuff to life. But then you also have clients and partners that they might have been burned a few times, right, because there's no kind of quantifiable review system or transparent pricing, right, into all the different creators or agencies or whatever in the space, right? So I think that ultimately we have we can really grow and continue to scale because we'll be able to, or we'll continue to serve these underserved segments.
I love that. What is the best way for someone to get in contact with you? VCs, supporters, anybody who wants to work for or with Blck Unicrn?
Yeah, so you can definitely reach out to me via email, josh@blackunicorn.com. Pretty responsive, so we'll love to connect.
Awesome. Josh, thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to see where Blck Unicrn goes, especially being part of that media, entertainment / tech come up, because it's like you said, it's growing, it's evolving, it's new, and it's getting that voice out and connecting people to these opportunities. So I want to thank you for being one of those people and for coming onto the show today.
Thank you, Jayla.
Guys, that was another episode of Tech It Up with Cafe Cultura. It's your girl, Jayla. Until next time. Bye.